Hey everybody, welcome to DadsDen of Pop Culture. You know, there are some comic books that are regarded as key issues, important moments in the history of comic books, highly sought after by collectors. And Superman number 330 is not one of those, but maybe it should be, because it answers the age-old question of how those glasses that Clark Kent wears can fool anybody. And we also learn the secret of the sinister Spellbinder, a character who will probably never show up again. So let's jump into this one. This is just like a little fun one, but I thought it was a clever story. A clever excuse for making those glasses work. So Superman number 330, this is from December 1978. We begin, of course, with one of their little splash pages. When is a secret identity not a secret identity? And when does the power of hypnosis, which ordinarily shouldn't affect the Man of Steel, suddenly threaten to defeat him? When the Spellbinder comes to town, that's when. And a battle of super hypnosis begins. It's the same day Superman discovers an astounding secret about himself, something so secret, not even he knew it. We challenge you to figure out what that secret is before Superman does, and to guess the startling identity of the Master Mesmerizer of Metropolis. Script, Martin Pasko, based on a story concept by Al Schroeder III. Art, the great Curt Swan and Frank Chiaramonte. Lettering Ben Oda, coloring Adrian Roy, editing Julius Schwartz. Okay, so let's crack into this dude. So we begin with a beautiful morning in Metropolis. What's that up in the sky? Hardly the kind of morning for a disaster. It looks like a satellite. It must have dropped out of orbit, crashed through Earth's atmosphere, and it's heading straight for us. Yee! So we begin at WGBS. Looking out the window here, we have Lois Lane and Lana Lang, Jimmy Olsen, and Clark Kent. And so, this thing is going to crash right towards them. And we hear, Lois say, "We will be killed. Clark, do something." "Yes, love, switch to Superman and stop that thing." "Superman? Me? Come on, Clark, this is no time to be coy. No, any other time we'd indulge you and pretend to believe your 300th queasy stomach routine, making believe we didn't know you were slipping away to the nearest stockroom and ripping off those phony eyeglasses in that silly blue suit. But right now, darling, we just can't afford to play games." And so Jimmy opens up his shirt. You see the Superman symbol, and why, it was all just a dream. But it does make him start thinking about those glasses. Now that I stop to think about it, that's the dumbest disguise I've ever seen. What am I supposed to look like? A totally different person? Superman wearing glasses is what I look like. But what else should I expect? Ordinary people start wearing glasses. Do their friends say, "Who are you?" No, they say, "Oh, you got glasses." Who was I trying to kid when I dreamed up that ridiculous disguise? Kid is right. I was Superboy when I thought up the glasses bit. A young, naive kid. I just didn't know any better. So they're basically echoing everything you've heard from Superman critics for, at that point, probably a couple decades, and in the decades since, that it's obviously a silly disguise. So how has this ever actually worked? Well, he's still thinking about this when he gets on the bus to go to work in the morning. And while he's on the bus, there's almost an accident with a armored car. Have fun with Hostess cupcakes and Twinkie cakes. Just biting that Twinkie kind of weird, if I'm completely honest here. Free wacky TV show cards. Holy moly. Comic books were Wonderland. And so we're going to be meeting now our villain for this issue. He's the guy floating up here with a giant propeller on his back. How does the propeller on his back allow him to float up and down. I don't know. We're still kind of in the Silver Age with Superman. It's maybe getting a little bit bronzy, but not especially bronzy. So the armored car has run into this fountain. Everybody's running around like crazy. And we hear Clark saying, everyone's rushing off the bus at once, like rats under the spell of some Pied Piper. If I were an ordinary Earthman, I'd be trampled. But since I'm not, I'll just let myself be swept along by this human tide until I can drop out of sight at super speed. You notice him dropping down this manhole. Sid, did you just feel something like a sudden gust of wind? Wind in a sewer? Harvey, don't be stupid. So he drops down, changes into Superman, and flies up. And what does he see? He sees all these people who are basically looting this armored car. It looks like it had diamonds in it. And they're throwing all the loot to this dude in his little bag. So Superman says, well, I'll take this fellow out, which shouldn't be hard. Despite his fancy props, he seems pretty ordinary. I'll approach him at invisible super speed and give him a light tap just enough to KO him. You're still conscious? Sure, I figured we'd meet sooner or later, Superman, and that you'd go up against me, so I came prepared by building a super shock-absorbent chin guard into my helmet. Guy thinks of everything. By the way, my name is the Spellbinder, and if you'd like to know what the name means, take a look down there. And you hear, run, little girl, run. And Superman looks down and he sees a little girl running in front of a speeding taxi cab. And so he thinks that the little girl has been ordered by this guy in order to, distract Superman. So he uses his superpowers to actually lift the taxis using his super breath, suction breath in this case, to lift the taxi over the girl. And so now he's going to use a burst of heat vision to melt the propeller Spellbinder's wearing. But before his eyes can even begin to heat up, the Spellbinder's hand darts to his belt, touches a stud, and a strange beam, invisible even to the Man of Steel, lances out. Now, Superman, look behind you, see the monster. And so basically what's happening here is Superman is being hypnotized by this guy. Well, how is he able to do this? Usually he can't be hypnotized. Well, we're going to find out. So monster, yes, there's a monster in the fountain. So he goes in and fights this thing. Looks a little bit like our bashful, blue-eyed thing from Marvel Comics, but only a little bit. But the people are all like, what is Superman doing? Because he appears to be fighting absolutely nothing. And so that's when he finally realizes, when his head clears, oh, super hypnotism. That's his power. Well, I'll be damned. Okay. Meanwhile, inside the Galaxy Communications building, Lana, I'd like you to meet Martin H. Corda, your new associate producer on the 6 o'clock report. How do you do, Ms. Lang? That's Miss Lang, please. Whatever. Got the little icy chill. Do they still do that in the modern comics? You get the little different shapes of word bubbles. I hired MH at the same time I hired you, Lana, and for the same reason, to give our local evening news a fresh look. But MH was kidnapped by that villain, Metallo, before he could join our staff. That was in Superman number 317. And I've spent the last several months in a hospital recovering from my experience. You see, that ugly so-and-so was a sadist. I was beaten rather badly. But the relief of being back at work again has greatly improved my disposition. Wow, he looks like a real charmer. But, the pipe is cool. Got to give him that. Okay, so at this point, we get some Silver Age insanity. Superman needs to warn the people of Metropolis about this hypnotism thing. So he builds a giant screen TV on a floating platform. And from it, he's announcing over these loudspeakers, the Spellbinder, a dangerous criminal possessing super hypnotic powers, is at large in this city. Mayor Harkness has declared a state of emergency. The Spellbinder can hypnotize any of you instantly and force you to aid him in his crimes. I want to prevent that. But to do so, I'll need your cooperation in allowing me to super hypnotize each of you watching me now. What a plan. And of course, we have to believe that now just about everybody in Metropolis is going to be looking at this thing, which, I mean, he might have quite a few people. And I don't know, maybe it's broadcasting over the air too. So what he does is he creates this hypnotic block in all of these people. Okay. You will be immune to any future attempt to hypnotize you. You will resist all hypnotic influences until you hear my voice say the word released. You will awaken from this trance when I say awaken. You will remember nothing of having been hypnotized. And then we get awaken, and we get him flying below. Oh, who do we got in here? Oh, Tony Dorsett. Cool. Okay. So here's when it starts to get weird. And of course, this is a good clue to what's going on. He flies back into WGBS, and as he's getting changed back into his Clark Kent, identity, Lana and this new guy walk in, and she says, "Superman? Great sons, I've been caught red-handed changing to Clark. My secret identity is finished." Not necessarily, Superman. Hello, Superman. This is a surprise, and a rather strange one at that. Huh? Pardon my curiosity, Superman. Why are you wearing those glasses and dressing up in that suit? What? Lana doesn't recognize me as Clark Kent. That's insane. I don't know what's going on, but if my secret identity is still secure, I might as well take advantage of the situation. I've decided that the best way to combat the Spellbinder is to assume a disguise. That much is obvious, dear heart, but you'll never fool anyone that way. Who are you supposed to be disguised as? Wait, maybe my hypnotic block has affected her memory, and she doesn't remember who Clark Kent is. I'm probably pushing my luck, but I have to know, so here goes. My good friend Clark Kent offered to let me borrow his identity. That's why I'm here, to pick up a GBS blazer. That's supposed to be Clark? Oh, come on, love. I admit there is a superficial resemblance, but you're too heavily built, and you're much too handsome. No, forget it. You don't really look like Clark at all. Well, she remembers Clark all right. Now, let's pursue this a little further. But, Lana, you were always so sure that Clark Kent was my secret identity. Yes, I was. When I was dumb. No. And I was even more convinced than ever these past few weeks. What with Clark disappearing just before you would show up, and vice versa. But the one thing I could never figure out was how you could change your appearance so drastically when you became Clark. But now that I see you like this, I'm finally convinced you can't possibly be Kent. So this is where he's a little screwed up here, because he's like going, but look, it's just glasses. What exactly are you talking about? Well, before he can worry too much about it, he gets alerted to another robbery happening at Norwich Sound Labs. So he flies over and, of course, finds the Spellbinder. And Spellbinder uses super hypnosis on him to make him think he doesn't have powers anymore. Except it actually does seem to work. I used to be a 2-bit hood out of Gotham City, but while I was in the joint, I did some reading and some experimenting, and now I got this hypnosis stuff down pat. The Batman fought him in Detective 358 back in December of 1966. So, wow, this dude's back after 12 years, which in DC comic book time would be maybe about 2 or 3 years. But still, that's a hell of a callback. Kind of like that they did that. So he steals these white discs, and Superman can't figure out exactly what they are. Propeller snaps into place. He takes off. Airborne, again, doesn't really make sense. So the police start shooting at him, because back in the old days, police would open fire just indiscriminately in open areas. And one of the bullets bounces off the propeller and hits Superman. Wait a minute, Superman can't really have been wounded, can he? No. Relax, boys, I'm all right. That bullet only made me believe I'd been hurt, thanks to the Spellbinder spell. It wasn't until I realized I wasn't hurt, proving I'm still invulnerable, that I realized my powers hadn't vanished, and I snapped out of the spell. I should have known it when that metal case shattered on my jaw. But blast it, I shouldn't have been I shouldn't have been hypnotized. Why didn't my block against it work? I've hypnotized myself successfully in the past. What did I do wrong? Wait, now I think I'm beginning to understand. And if I'm right, it'll explain everything. Well, he's Superman. Of course he's right. Including why Lana didn't recognize me as Clark. I'll call Ernie at the planet and release him from my spell. Okay. So he does that. Flies back to, in Metropolis or wherever he's at in Metropolis. The sound's getting louder. It's coming from the man down there. According to my X-ray vision, he's the Spellbinder. Okay, so he's identified this man by this humming sound that I think has to do with his hypnotism powers. So he uses a little low-intensity heat vision to burn away his clothes. This is a good one. And now for some super hypnotism, and the ball game's over. Look into my eyes. Look and obey. You will surrender. Yes, I'll surrender. But not to fashion. In a pig's eye, and he throws himself off of the thing. Propeller snaps into place, and he flies away. Well, he didn't fly away, but he flies up. Well, you won't get far. Wrong, Superman. I'm taking hypnotic control of you again. Now go away forever. Leave me alone. Yes, I must obey. I will go away. But I won't leave you alone. In fact, I'm taking you with me. What? So he basically grabs a hold of the propeller as he flies away, and uses suction to, pull him along, digs this hole, pulls him in after him. And then, as you can see, Spellbinder, I'm not hypnotized. My mistake was in not realizing sooner that the hypnotic technique you used on me was not visual, but sonic, using sound. Aha. Crump. That was the name of Andy Taylor's girl, right? Helen Crump. You used a high-frequency sound, pitched beyond the range of even my super hearing to make me suggestible. That was easy to figure out. Everything I saw and heard at the Norwich Sound Lab gave away your secrets. So I've been wearing these super earplugs to block out your hypnotic sound. Up till now, I've been reading your lips. You've just made a fatal mistake, Soups, by taking out those earplugs, because I still got my sonic whammy. Hear it? But before the hateful hypnotist can issue a compelling command to the Man of Steel, Gah! It worked. Spellbinder didn't realize that what I dug here is a miniature echo canyon, which amplified his own sound beyond the pain threshold. That pain was enough to knock him out. No wonder I couldn't super hypnotize him. He was wearing special lenses. You either love this era of Superman or you don't. There's a lot of silly stuff. Personally, I love it. Okay, so now we're going to get the big reveal about what's going on. Okay, so after turning in the Spellbinder over to police and releasing all of Metropolis from the hypnotic block, I finished those portrait sketches you wanted, Clark. The ones for that article you're writing as a favor to Perry White about what it's like to be Superman's closest friend. They're in here, along with the photos I used for reference. So, you notice here's a Superman photo, and there's his sketch. Based on that photo, there's the Clark Kent sketch, or photo, but look at the sketch. Looks very different. He looks older, weaker, etc. Exactly what we're supposed to believe that he makes himself look like as Clark Kent. What do you think, Lana? Does this sketch do me justice? Oh, Clark, that's you to the life. Then my theory must be correct. Apparently, my power of super hypnotism is always working at low power, even when I'm not willing it. It automatically projects my subconscious desire to be seen as a weaker and frailer man than I really am. But without my conscious will behind it, my hypnotic power wouldn't work so well, except for one thing: my glasses. Years ago, as a young boy, I once tried to use my heat vision while posing as Clark. Yow, the heat's melting the lenses, but I found a solution to the problem. When I examined the wreckage of the rocket that brought me to Earth, like everything from Krypton, the rocket was indestructible, but now it's in pieces, because the explosion of its Kryptonian fuel, which ignited when the rocket crashed, powerful enough to wreck it. So it's invulnerable. Well, it's funny. We think of Superman, he's invulnerable under the yellow sun, but Kryptonian things are also invulnerable under the yellow sun, which, but the fuel was too powerful, but the sun wasn't touching the fuel. Okay, so again, there's a heavy dose of sort of pseudoscience. It's for kids. You just sort of roll with it. But basically, he uses the plexiglass from his old rocket to make his glasses, so he'll have indestructible lenses. Some unknown property of the Kryptonian plexiglass must intensify the low-level hypnotic effect of my eyes. So when people look at Clark, what they see is the image of Clark I try to project. Aha! So now we've learned the secret. This explains a lot. Like a cop who said I looked bigger, more muscular from the back before I turned and looked at him through my glasses. Lana didn't recognize me as Clark when she saw me changing clothes because of the hypnotic block, which commanded her to resist all hypnotism, including the effect of my glasses. And I couldn't create a self-hypnotic block against the Spellbinder because I had my glasses on when I tried. The same thing in the specs that intensifies my super hypnotism must prevent it from working on me, which is why I never see myself in a mirror the way others see me. Cameras must reproduce my eyes' hypno effect perfectly because people recognize Clark on TV and in pictures, so they really were thinking about this. The trance must linger on people a while. I've lost my powers in the past and must have stopped super hypnotizing them then, but I guess I was never powerless long enough for the trance to fade. And here I thought my glasses were a dumb disguise. Far from it. Without them, I wouldn't even have a disguise at all. Okay, so here's our story for today. It's a silly one, but I like the idea that somebody had made a suggestion to the folks at DC, specifically Al Schroeder III, about this idea for why the glasses actually work. And they went ahead and created a story around it. And you could see, though, that they had to really jump through some hoops. I think they actually put a bit of thought into this because people would say, well, how could it work over TV? Well, what about when he's lost his power? So they're explaining things before people have the questions. I'm assuming people probably, Martin Pasko probably had those questions. Maybe some people he was working with did. Maybe Julia Schwartz was asking that too. So they crafted this story about these glasses and about the super hypnotism to explain why Superman's disguise actually works. Okay, so this is not a key comic, and it will never be a key comic. In fact, you could say it's not in the greatest of shape. I got this out of a 50-cent bin. But look, if you collect comics for the money, it makes sense that you'd skip things like this. But if you just love comic books, you don't want to skip those stories in between. Sometimes they can be pretty fun. They can be pretty clever. They can have neat little tidbits for you for the whole mythos of Superman. So there you have it, folks. Superman number 330 from December of 1978. We learn the secret of how the Clark Kent glasses actually fool everybody, and we get to see the Spellbinder get knocked down a peg by Superman. Let me know in the comments what you think of this one. Can you find any flaws in their story of how this works? I can't imagine anybody could find any flaws in this, but if you do, put them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this little video, please give it a like. Maybe think of subscribing to the channel. Maybe think of sharing it with a friend. Maybe one of those friends, so-called friends out there who doesn't believe that the glasses would work. Maybe they need to be taught a few things about super hypnotism. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. Read some old Superman. And I'll see you hopefully again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.